Okay, so the election results are in, and you have won. You have won the Republican primary.
Primary.
And so that's the Andover Townsman for this week. And let's see, does it show where it says mentioned that you won?
Yeah, it should be in here somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, which page it's on.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's see. All right, so there's Adams, Andover's Adams, and Lyons are GOP rep picks. Okay, so you won. So congratulations. How does it feel?
Feels pretty good. We worked extraordinarily hard. It was a grassroots campaign. I think that one of the most satisfying things about the campaign was that all the hard work really paid off. And sometimes when you run a campaign, a lot of it's faith-based, and you get out there and you just work hard. You ignore what your opposition is doing or saying, and you have to find that well of inspiration for yourself and just get out there and work hard. I believe in this, and I believe it's time for real change in Massachusetts, in the legislature, and we need people who are willing to support the policies for long-term economic growth. And that was my message the entire time. I knocked on thousands and thousands of doors and just spoke to people from the heart. And it's what I truly believe in. And I feel it's resonating with folks, and it's time to make a difference up there.
Let me ask you a question. One thing I did notice, and this is true not only of you but other candidates like Barry Feingold, you lost Andover, but you won Lawrence and Tewksbury. What do you make of that?
Well, I didn't lose Andover by very much. I think it was about 41 votes. So I think we did well, actually, in Andover. And Sal Tabit is a phenomenal candidate. He's very well known in town. He's got great name recognition. He ran once before already. And I just went out and worked hard. And I spoke with folks in every precinct in the district. In terms of Lawrence and Tewksbury, well, it is true. They really delivered for me. Tewksbury was fantastic. I spent a lot of time there and made a lot of great contacts. And I feel like they're folks who are really having a hard time out there. And in addition to Lawrence and Andover, the message was more tailored to community services and school budgets and townside budgets that are being cut. In Lawrence and Tewksbury, they're really, really struggling. And the message was jobs. And it's time and again, this is something that I've had experience with. I've supported local aid. I've supported a ballot question that I co-authored along with a couple of my friends and colleagues to bring local aid back to cities and towns. And this is something that is a big issue in the state. And they've increased spending by 35% in less than 10 years, yet they're cutting our local aid, which means cuts to local services. And then they tell us that they have to raise our taxes in order to pay for it. I just think it doesn't add up. And it's fuzzy math, and I think we can do a lot better. I think if we have the right leadership, then we can right this sinking ship.
Do you think, what is the lesson for future elections and for other candidates, the fact that Andover was not the determining factor in the election? What does that say about, should candidates put more emphasis on Lawrence and Tewksbury? Or, if you can lose Andover and still win the election, what do you take away from that?
Well, Andover still is a very, very important factor in the campaign. It's 60% of the votes in the district. So you can't afford to lose Andover,
right?
Or even to...
but it depends on the margin, right? It depends on...
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, for sure, Lawrence and Tewksbury really delivered it for me. And, I grew up in Andover, and I went to all the public schools and lived in town for 19 years. And so I know a lot of folks, and that certainly helped as well. Andover is a very, very important aspect of the campaign. But, no, Tewksbury and Lawrence really delivered it for me. And
were you cognizant of that fact that they were going to play such a big role, or was that a surprise to you?
I think a lot of it was a surprise to me, but I spent the vast majority of my time in Andover. So I was glad that I spent that much time. What if I hadn't? I wouldn't be standing here right now, probably.
Mm-hmm. You were mentioning, sort of that Sal, Tabit was sort of, this very formidable candidate, and that, the fact that you were able to defeat him, was sort of, it took a little while to sink in. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, I think, like any candidate, I had a few moments of doubt and discouragement, but I overcame that. And I went out and worked hard, and I tried to ignore what my opponent was doing and saying, and just went out there and worked hard and talked to the voters and told them who I was and what I believe in. And, Sal is a great guy. He's a kind man. He's got a nice family. And he owns a law practice in the Merrimack Valley, and he's a lot of contacts in the area. But just went out and worked hard, and that was at the core of my message. It's hard work, a little humility, and the right message and experience go a long way.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so now we're at a time where clearly, I believe it's observable that the momentum is on conservative candidates, people right of center, people who believe in smaller government, just if you sort of look at things nationally. Where do you believe the government, what do you believe is the appropriate role for government to play in getting the economy back on track? Do you believe the government can do things to stimulate the economy, or do you believe in just simply less spending, lower taxes, smaller government, getting government out of the way and letting the private sector take over? Or do you believe that there's a compromise there?
Yeah, well, I said early on in the campaign that I think there's a proper role for government, and that is to get government out of the way, for the most part. But what government should do is focus on why it exists in the first place. In an era, I've said this time and again, but in an era of extraordinary government spending, what are the real priorities of government? I think the priorities are for local aid, things that support core community services, things like education, public safety, and an infrastructure. And these are the types of things that are always the first to go when the state is in a budget crisis, like it has been the last 3.5 years. And why community services are always the first to go really baffles me. And so that's when I stood up for community services. I think that should be the emphasis of government. That's where small government works best, is at the very local level. And I think that in terms of an economic strategy, to address your question, the best thing the government can do, again, is to get out of the way. And that means reducing its role in people's lives. That means cutting taxes. That means reforming government. Republicans aren't just slashers. They're also reformers. They believe in cutting taxes and lessening the size and scope of government through reforms. There are about $2 billion in reforms available to the state that the legislature has purposefully avoided over the last 3 years, and I think that's a little bit arrogant. I also think that that's representative of the culture of corruption on Beacon Hill. They think they know better than we do how to spend our money. So I believe that we need a new economic approach to get government out of the way, cut taxes, and reform government. And that's my agenda. That largely mirrors what Charlie Baker stands for. So I hope to be on the Baker team.
Great. I think that's everything. Anything else you want to say?
Very good. That's about it. I hope to see you soon at your doorsteps. And if you have any questions at all for me, you can reach me on my email address, which is paul@votepauladams.com, or my cell phone at 978-494-3262. And look forward to speaking with you in the coming weeks. Thank you.